I pitched a small tent by my own lake, just trying to enjoy the weekend. 10 minutes later, Karen's on the phone with 911, screaming about illegal camping. What she didn't know, I was already closing a deal. By the time the cops showed up, I had bought her entire street, and by sunset, it was gated and shut down. Now she needs my permission just to get to her driveway. I bought the lake for its silence. No ski boats roaring at dawn. No ice cream trucks looping the shoreline with off-key jingles. Just a glassy stretch of water cradled by pines and a single gravel road that dead-ended at my front gate. Even better, the parcel sat outside the boundaries of Maple Crest Estates, the HOA kingdom perched on the opposite ridge. Their bylaws stopped at the creek. My deed picked up from there. So when Friday rolled in, I shut down my laptop, packed a cooler, and pitched a two-man canvas tent on the south bank. No fancy glamping setup, just canvas, fire ring, and the promise of uninterrupted stars. I even told myself I'd keep the phone on airplane mode. The world could spin without me for 48 hours. I'd barely zipped the tent flap when a Range Rover crunched down my lane like a tank taking the beach. Out stepped Karen Wellington, Maple Crest's self-appointed queen of covenants, wearing white capris, an HOA badge lanyard, and sunglasses the size of manhole covers. She marched straight across the gravel as if property lines bowed to her. "Excuse me." She pointed at the tent as though it were contraband. "Camping is expressly forbidden inside the Maple Crest recreational zone without board approval." I smiled, genuinely at first. Good thing this isn't Maple Crest. "You crossed the creek back there. You're on Cedar Hollow Ranch now." Karen's nostrils flared. "The lake is a shared aesthetic resource visible from the community that grants us enforcement rights." "That's adorable," I said, leaning on my cooler. "But enforcement rights stop at legal boundaries, and my survey markers say you're standing on mine." She snapped a photo of the tent, another of me, then jabbed her phone. HOA Bylaw 13. No unsightly structures or temporary dwellings. I'm calling 911 for trespassing and community disruption. I almost laughed. "On my land." Karen didn't answer. She was already barking into the phone. "Yes, officer. A male subject is refusing to vacate a restricted area. Possible vagrant situation." While she delivered her dramatic monologue, I peeled an orange and watched the sun lower behind her ridiculous sunglasses. Part of me wondered if I should intervene, but curiosity won. I wanted to see how far she'd push the theater. She finished the call, glared, and folded her arms. "The sheriff's department will be here any minute," she hissed. "Great. They can admire the tent stakes, their top-grade aluminum." Karen's silence vibrated with indignation. She paced the shoreline, snapping more photos, my kayak, my dock, even my golden retriever, Murph, who lifted a lazy eyebrow before returning to his nap. The cruiser appeared 6 minutes later, tires crackling. Two deputies stepped out, Deputy Hill, broad as a barn door, and Deputy Flores, whose mirrored aviators reflected Karen's frantic gestures. Karen launched in, "Officers, that man is squatting on HOA land. He set up an illegal campsite, polluting our view corridor." Hill held up a hand. "Ma'am, slow down." "Sir, can we see some ID?" "Absolutely." I handed over my license, and for good measure, the laminated survey map I kept in the glove box. "You'll find the parcel number matches the county grid." Flores studied the map, then the stake markers visible by the creek. "Looks legit, ma'am. This property falls outside Maple Crest jurisdiction." Karen's jaw clicked. "That map is outdated. The developer granted us scenic easement authority." Flores radioed dispatch. Read off my parcel, waited. Crackle. "Confirmed. Privately owned. No easement on file." He turned back. "Ma'am, this is his land." Karen sputtered. But camping violates community standards." Hill raised an eyebrow. "Community standards don't apply off community. Unless you're seeing something dangerous here, there's no cause." She pivoted, desperate. "Open flame. He'll start a wildfire." I pointed to the portable fire pit, lid screwed tight. "Haven't even struck a match." Flores tucked his notebook. "We appreciate your concern, but there's no trespass here." Karen stared at them, veins beating in her neck. "You're making a mistake." Hill shrugged. The mistake would be writing a citation where none applies. They tipped their hats, wished me a peaceful weekend, and drove off. Karen watched the cruiser crest the hill, realizing her 911 gambit had fizzled like a damp sparkler. "I'm not done," she growled. "I'll have the board fine you in a bankruptcy. We control road access." I opened my cooler, pulled a soda, and took a long sip. About that road access. I glanced at my phone. Cell service had flickered back. "Excuse me a sec." I dialed Jonah, my real estate attorney/agent, an old college buddy. "Hey," I said, still facing Karen. "Remember that conversation about the abandoned right-of-way deed up by Maple Crest? The one the developer never transferred?" Jonah chuckled on the other end. "The private street nobody realized was still for sale? Price dropped again this morning, 50 grand. I'll wire 60. Full cash offer. Draw up the papers. Closing today." Karen's eyes widened. "What you doing?" "Buying your street," I said, covering the mic one moment. Jonah confirmed he'd email the DocuSign within minutes. I hung up, slid my phone in my pocket, and smiled. "Sorry, where were we?" Karen's voice trembled. "You can't purchase infrastructure. It's communal property. Only if someone owned it. Turns out no one quite did." I gave a playful shrug. "But someone will in approximately," I checked my watch, 6 minutes. Karen stormed off, shouting something about injunctions, but her words felt thin against the hush of the lake. Murph sauntered to my side, tail thumping the grass. Together we watched her Range Rover reverse in flustered jerks, fishtailing gravel until it vanished beyond the trees. The sun dipped lower, igniting the water in gold. I finished my soda, staked the last skyline on the tent, and listened to the first chorus of crickets rise. Somewhere across the water a loon called, a long, mournful note that somehow sounded like laughter tonight. A DocuSign notification pinged. I signed, initialed, and hit finish. The deed recorded automatically with the county clerk's digital system. 6 minutes after Karen's 911 call, the street under her HOA throne legally belonged to me. I lit a single citronella candle, purely for ambience, then poured a finger of bourbon into a tin mug. "To peaceful weekends," I said to the lake. Murph barked approval. I didn't feel vengeful, just amused at the symmetry. Karen tried to eject me from land I owned. Fate gave me the deed to the pavement she took for granted. Funny how entitlement blinds people to actual ownership. As dusk settled, I texted Jonah one final note. "Please draft an official access policy. Free passage for all homeowners except one. Wellington, Karen L." He replied with a laughing emoji and the words, "You're savage." Maybe. But suddenly the stars looked even brighter, the canvas tent cozier, and the gravel rode up the ridge, wonderfully silent. Tomorrow, I'd sip coffee on my dock while Karen wondered why her street sprouted a private road. Entry by owner permit only sign overnight. Tonight, I had crickets, bourbon, and the deep, still water. And that was more than enough. I woke before sunrise, brewed cowboy coffee over a single-burner stove, and replayed the previous evening in my head. Karen's 911 dramatics, the deputy's shrug, the 46-page DocuSign packet that slid into my inbox while crickets chirped. I still half expected it to feel like a prank, but there it was on my phone. A recorded deed, stamped by the county clerk at 7:06 p.m., granting Cedar Hollow Holdings, LLC, a shell company I'd formed for privacy, full ownership of Ridgecrest Lane, the half-mile stretch of asphalt that served as Maple Crest's only ingress and egress. I'd bought roads before, timber tracks, utility easements, but never as a chess move. And I wasn't out for revenge. I just love clean boundaries. Karen had blurred hers. Time to make them razor sharp. First, I needed to understand the lay of the land better than Karen did. I shut the camp stove, fetched my laptop from the cabin, and tethered it to a hotspot. Out came 3 browser tabs. County GIS portal, parcel maps, ownership history, state corporation registry, to verify Maple Crest, HOA's corporate filings, public records search, liens, easements, and any lawsuits. Maple Crest Estates comprised 112 residential lots plus 3 common space parcels. But the GIS overlay revealed something curious. The road parcel, marked in faded yellow, was separate, never deeded to the HOA. A footnote read, "Owner of record, Ridgecrest Development Partners, dissolved." The developer's LLC had gone inactive 5 years ago. Its assets reverted to the state and were liquidated at auction. That explained why Jonah had found it sitting cheap in the county land bank. No one in Maple Crest even realized their main artery was orphaned real estate. The HOA's last annual report, filed by, who else? Karen Wellington, listed easement authority as a corporate asset, but there was no recorded document backing the claim. In legal terms, she basically penciled in authority she didn't own, hoping no one would flip to the appendices. Scrolling through county clerk filings, I discovered half a dozen collection liens Maple Crest had placed against homeowners. Late fees, landscaping fines, road maintenance surcharges. Every lien cited rights of ingress/egress over Ridgecrest Lane pursuant to HOA charter. My grin grew. They've been enforcing road fees on pavement that wasn't theirs, a textbook case of ultra vires, actions beyond legal power. 3. Mapping the human terrain. Digital proof is great, but eyewitness testimony is gold. I drafted a simple questionnaire. Have you paid a road maintenance fee in the last 5 years? Did you receive a fine for parking, guest access, or deliveries? Were you told the HOA owns Ridgecrest Lane? I printed 20 copies, clipped them to clipboards, irony intentional, and set off on foot. Ridgecrest Lane was quiet. Spruce canopies, manicured lawns, an ornamental gazebo Karen had installed at HOA expense. Sunday seemed perfect. Residents were watering planters and fetching newspapers. They paid a $300 emergency pothole levy last winter. Karen claimed the road company had threatened a lawsuit if the HOA didn't repair cracks. Funny, Mr. Alvarez said. The pothole disappeared overnight. No crew, no invoice. They signed a questionnaire eagerly. Fined twice for parking a camper for more than 4 hours. Karen cited private road statutes. When I asked for the statute's number, she called them combative. Rollins added a note. Karen threatened to tow my kid's basketball hoop for sightline obstruction. Here was a gem. Pennington knew contracts. He'd pressed Karen for deed evidence at a 2022 meeting. She waved a folder labeled confidential. Pennington shrugged, signed my sheet, and scribbled, "Happy hunting." She's bluffing. By noon, I returned to the cabin with 15 signed statements and a thermos of sweet tea from Mrs. Alvarez. Only 2 residents declined. One was Karen's friend, the other didn't want drama. Drama would arrive regardless. I forwarded the testimonies to Jonah. He replied, "Jonah, this is a class action waiting to happen. Want me to draft demand letters?" Me, hold that thought. Phase 2 exposure. I wasn't looking for payouts. I wanted truth sunlight. Still, a proper chain of title report would cement our position. Jonah ordered it rush. While waiting, I called a signage company. I need a 36-inch reflective sign. Private road, access by permit only. Owner, Cedar Hollow Holdings. Install tomorrow morning. Any access list? Everyone's permitted, except Wellington. Karen L. Printed in 18-point type. The installer whistled. Someone's making a statement. Just clarifying boundaries. Maple Crest's monthly board meeting fell 2 days later, Tuesday at 6 p.m. I wasn't a member, but state law required open sessions during financial discussions. I arrived early, dressed in jeans and a polite smile, binder tucked under my arm. Karen sat at the head table in a coral blazer, flanked by 3 directors. She clocked me and stiffened. Karen, through grit teeth, "This is a private meeting." Me, road maintenance is on the agenda. As property owner, I have standing. She attempted a rebuttal, but the bylaw she herself wrote, Section 2, Article 5, confirmed my right to attend. That irony tasted like peach pie. Karen opened with a PowerPoint titled Fiscal Responsibility and Road Projects. Slide 1 showed a $12,000 reserve for Ridgecrest repaving Q4. She breezed to Slide 2, Projected Special Assessments, when I raised my hand. Me. Point of information. On what legal basis is the HOA allocating funds to repave a road it doesn't own? Murmurs. A director asked, Karen, we own Ridgecrest, right? Karen clicked her remote too fast. Slide 3 glitched blank. Of course we do, she bluffed. We have easement rights. I opened my binder, held up the recorded deed. As of Friday, title resides with Cedar Hollow Holdings. No easement filed. No HOA ownership. Meaning every road levy since 2018 was collected under false pretenses. Silence detonated. A board member coughed. Someone whispered, "Is that legal?" Me. It's perfectly legal, just not for you. However, I'm a generous neighbor. Every household may continue using the road fee-free, except one. Ms. Wellington will need written permission. Gasps, scattered applause, one stifled laugh. Karen's face flushed purple. She lunged to snatch the deed, but I slid it back into the binder. I clicked my own USB into the projector. A spreadsheet of every road-related fine matched against the deed timeline. Total, $38,450 siphoned into a road safety fund that actually paid for gazebo flowers, Karen's Range Rover detailing, and a board retreat at a lakeside spa. I flipped to homeowner affidavits, the ones I'd collected. Names highlighted. Karen stood, voice quavering. This is fabricated. He hacked our records. Judge Pennington rose from the audience. I kept my original invoice, Ms. Wellington. It matches his numbers. Director number 2 looked ill. Karen, is this true? She blamed the treasurer. The treasurer, red-eyed, muttered, Karen told me it was legitimate. The room's mood shifted from skepticism to collective anger. I finished. Given these facts, I demand the HOA cease road assessments, refund improper fines, and remove Ms. Wellington as president pending investigation. I handed copies of the deed and affidavits to each director. Also, the new road sign goes up at dawn. Karen's chair screeched back as she bolted for the hallway. Phone to ear, calling her lawyer or exorcist, maybe both. The board voted 3-0. The treasurer abstained. To table all road fees, launch an audit, and convene a special session to consider leadership changes. Outside, moonlight lit the gazebo Karen loved so much. I breathed the pine-scented air, sweetened now with justice. My phone buzzed. Jonah's title report. Clean chain back to the bankrupt developer. No encumbrances. Perfect. Wednesday, 7 a.m. A word truck idled beside the cul-de-sac. 2 men in neon vests drilled holes, planted the steel post, and bolted on the reflective sign. I sipped coffee from my truck bed, offered them donuts. They admired the wording. That Wellington lady's gonna flip, one said. At 7:45, Karen's Range Rover appeared, braked hard at the sign. She marched to the workers. Remove it. They pointed at the permit taped to the post, issued by the county, listing Cedar Hollow Holdings as owner. Karen screamed legal threats, but the crew just shrugged. They'd been paid. She spun her SUV around, tires squealing, but not before I snapped a photo of her scowl beneath the bold letters, Private Road. Owner permission required. Emails exploded all day. Residents forwarded screenshots of Karen's panicked next-door posts. Road hijacked. HOA under attack. Most replies were unsympathetic. Some joked about charging Karen tolls to visit her own mailbox. A meme of her Range Rover caught behind the sign racked up likes. I sent a community-wide letter. Dear neighbors, as new owner of Ridgecrest Lane, I guarantee unrestricted access for every household, permanently free of charge. My only condition, the HOA may not collect road fees or issue fines related to this property. Sincerely, Cedar Hollow Holdings, your tent-pitching neighbor. Responses poured in. Thank yous, bake sale invitations. One request to name the road Karen's Folly. I declined. Magnanimity looked better than mockery, but I did chuckle. That evening, Jonah and I pored over the HOA's publicly posted budgets. We discovered Karen's fines didn't just cover road repairs. She'd earmarked funds for designer planners outside the clubhouse for $1,600. Emergency legal reserve, $8,000. That coincidentally matched the retainer for her personal lawyer. A line item simply labeled Community Relations Consulting, $3, 200 paid to Wellington Communications, a DBA registered to her sister. Armed with numbers, we compiled a fraud packet for the County Consumer Protection Unit. Jonah predicted restitution demands within weeks. 10. Karen's desperate maneuvers. 2 days later, Karen filed a temporary restraining order to block the road sign and reclaim emergency HOA access. The judge, none other than Judge Pennington's old law clerk, denied it in chambers. Reason: she lacked standing. The road was privately held and no imminent harm existed. Karen also attempted a PR offensive. Glossy flyers decrying corporate land grabs showed up on mailboxes. But after residents read our deed letter and saw their fines evaporate, sympathy for Karen hovered near zero. The HOA board froze Karen's discretionary spending. An independent auditor began reviewing 5 years of bank statements. The County Consumer Office opened an inquiry into deceptive fee collection. Karen's attorney withdrew, citing irreconcilable differences of fact. And me? I finally got my peaceful weekend. I left the tinned-up, grilled trout on a cedar plank and watched the starlight ripple across water that belonged to me down to the last drop. Somewhere beyond the pines, Karen stewed over a road she'd driven for years without ever checking who really held the title. Turns out, a clipboard queen's worst enemy is a guy with a survey map, a patient attorney, and a knack for reading between property lines. She wanted power. I preferred paperwork. And paperwork, when filed correctly, is mightier than any HOA bylaw. The investigation was complete. Discovery lay bare. The next phase, counterattack and legal unraveling, wouldn't just end Karen's reign. It would rewrite the neighborhood's power map forever. But for now, I raised a mug of camp coffee to the quiet lake and whispered to the moon, "Checkmate, Your Highness." And it's only Wednesday. The morning the new sign went up, I sat on my tailgate sipping hot coffee and watching the drillers set bolts like they were anchoring history. It was simple, reflective steel, 3 lines of text in bold black font. Private road. Access by owner permission only. Owner, Cedar Hollow Holdings. Beneath that, in smaller print, a clause that would soon become infamous in HOA group chats across the county. Access granted to all Ridgecrest residents with the exception of Wellington, Karen L. The installer gave me a look. That last line real? I grinned. It's personal, not petty. 10 minutes later, a Range Rover rounded the bend like a cruise missile. Karen hit the brakes, so hard gravel flew. Her door flung open mid-roll. She stomped toward the sign, lips already forming a war cry. "You can't do this." "I already did," I said, nodding toward the freshly sealed post. "This road is community property. Your sign is vandalism. It's a legally recorded private road, ma'am, and I'm the legally recorded owner. You can check with the county clerk, or just reread the last memo I sent." Karen's eyes flicked over the sign again. When she saw her name printed in black and white beneath the words "exception of," her cheeks flushed a color I hadn't seen since my high school principal got caught speeding through a school zone. "I'm filing a lawsuit," she said, voice shaking. "You'll be the second one today threatening that. First was a guy who parked on my dock thinking it was public. Guess what? He was wrong too." Her jaw twitched. "This is harassment." "No, Karen. This is property law. You built an empire on a road you never owned. I bought the ground under your kingdom. Now I'm just collecting rent, metaphorically speaking." She stormed back to her vehicle, muttering words I'm sure her HOA etiquette guide wouldn't approve of, and peeled off, tires shrieking against the private gravel I now controlled. Over the next 48 hours, the tremors began. A string of emails lit up the neighborhood listserv. The headline from one board member, Jeff Langston, read simply, "We've been misled." In a message, Jeff laid it out. "It has come to my attention that Ridgecrest Lane, the road we've all been told falls under HOA management, is in fact privately owned, and has been since last Friday. No easement, no transfer to our control. All road-related fines or assessments made under the assumption of HOA ownership are now in legal jeopardy." Attached was a copy of the deed I'd filed, plus a legal memo from my attorney Jonah explaining the implications. The memo's title? lack of standing, and unauthorized use. A primer for HOA liability. It landed like a grenade. People started replying in threads. Does this mean I didn't have to pay that $275 road resurfacing fee last summer? So wait, she's been citing people for overstepping parking lines on land she doesn't control. Is this why my fine got denied in court last year? Because the HOA never had the legal right to issue it? That last one came from a neighbor named Terrence whose guest truck had been towed in 2022, right off a patch of curb Karen claimed was HOA right-of-way. He filed a small claims case and lost because the HOA affirmed ownership. Now he wanted his money and an apology. Spoiler, he'd get one of those. The other would take a bit longer. Karen tried to fight back. She posted flyers on every mailbox kiosk. HOA alert. False claims of road ownership. Do not be deceived. We are in the process of restoring proper control over Ridgecrest Lane. Please disregard illegal signage and continue normal use. The individual responsible is not affiliated with this community. It backfired immediately. The sign installer posted a photo of his county-issued permit. The county GIS office confirmed the deed on their interactive parcel map. And I posted scanned receipts of all HOA road fines, highlighting the ones that Karen had signed off on herself, often without a board vote. I also posted my own community letter. Dear neighbors, as you've now seen, Ridgecrest Lane was never transferred to HOA ownership. This is not an act of hostility, it's one of restoration. I am offering every household free, permanent access across the road with one exception. Karen L. Wellington. Why? Because she lied. She levied fines on property she didn't control. She told you your dues went toward road maintenance when they funded her car detailing and flower planters. This road will remain open for you, not for her. Sincerely, the guy with the deed and the tent. Things escalated faster than I expected. Karen filed for a temporary restraining order, claiming the sign was a malicious attempt to defame and isolate her. The court denied it the next day. The judge's reason? The sign was accurate, legally permitted, and non-threatening. She then tried to hold an emergency HOA board meeting to censure me and revoke community interaction privileges. I wasn't even a member. She still tried. That's when her own board turned on her. The vice president, Tina, finally snapped. She posted a public resignation letter. I will no longer serve under a president who has repeatedly acted without transparency or legal basis. Ms. Wellington has misrepresented our legal standing, spent funds unilaterally, and placed this board in legal jeopardy. That was the first domino. 2 more board members resigned that same week. Karen called it a coordinated smear campaign, but even her allies had stopped answering her emails. At the next scheduled HOA meeting, attendance tripled. Standing room only. Karen opened the meeting like nothing had changed. Let's move on to item 3, lawn irrigation schedules. A hand shot up. Tina, before that, I'd like to motion for your removal as board president due to breach of fiduciary duty and legal misrepresentation. Another hand raised. Jeff, seconded. Karen tried to ignore them. We're not entertaining personal attacks tonight. Tina stood. Karen, we've all seen the deed. You told us we owned something we never did. That's not a personal attack. That's a statement of fact. Someone from the back shouted, Where's my refund for the road fine, Karen? She gavelled hard. This meeting is adjourned. No one left. Instead, Jeff pulled out a printed petition. Per HOA bylaws, any 3 board members may call for an emergency vote. They voted. Result? 29 in favor of Karen's removal. 2 abstentions. 1, Karen herself, opposed. It was done. But Karen wasn't. She filed a formal ethics complaint with the county. The new road owner is using his authority to exclude me from accessing my own home. The county reviewed the deed, the signage, the open access letters, and dismissed the claim. She then tried to call a local news crew to do a story on abusive private land ownership. The reporter she called? Her cousin's neighbor. The station passed. She emailed me a cease and desist letter via a free legal template site. Jonah framed it. Meanwhile, the neighborhood evolved. Without Karen's interference, the HOA drafted new rules with real community input. No more secret fines. All citations now required majority board approval and photographic evidence. Road funds? Suspended indefinitely. Naomi, the single mom who once got fined for letting her kids play with sidewalk chalk, organized a block party. I got the first invitation. I parked Murph's Bowl near the snack table and watched kids play tag on the very gravel Karen used to patrol like a guard dog. A neighbor handed me a beer and whispered, "She picked the wrong guy." I smiled. She picked the wrong road. The best part? I hadn't fined Karen. I hadn't barred her from accessing her home. I'd simply put up a sign that reminded her, and everyone else, who legally controlled the ground beneath their Range Rovers. She could still drive down the street, technically, but the walk to her mailbox took longer now, with neighbors choosing not to nod, not to wave. Silence is a verdict, too. She built a regime on lies and fines. Now she was just another homeowner on a private road she didn't own, and one she couldn't quite control anymore. And me? I went back to my lakeside tent. The water was still, the sky clear, the gravel road silent. A man should be able to camp on his own land without a war breaking out. But sometimes, when that war comes to you, the best way to win isn't shouting. It's signing the deed beneath their feet and watching the kingdom they built on borrowed ground crumble. One lie at a time. That IT didn't take long for Karen to realize that screaming into a courtroom has a very different effect than barking across a HOA board meeting. The morning after the board voted to remove her as president, she showed up at the county courthouse in a beige power suit, clutching a folder stuffed with loosely organized printouts. She filed for an emergency injunction against me on behalf of the Maple Crest Homeowners Association. She claimed my signage, my open access letter, and my decision to exclude her personally from my road were all unconstitutional, retaliatory, and emotionally damaging. She attached no supporting documentation, no easements, no deeds, no contracts proving the HOA ever owned Ridgecrest Lane. Just bullet points, underlines, and a one-page letter she wrote herself accusing me of using private property ownership to instigate social exclusion. The judge, an unflinching, silver-haired woman who'd served on the bench longer than Karen had run the HOA, read it silently, then asked a single question. "Ms. Wellington, what evidence do you have that this road belongs to the HOA?" Karen stammered. "It always has. We've used it for years, maintained it, held parades on it. Usage is not ownership," the judge said flatly. "Do you have a deed?" Karen faltered. "No, but..." Then I see no standing. Motion denied. Just like that. 10 minutes. Karen walked out of the courthouse deflated, her heels clicking hollowly on the tile, like punctuation marks in a sentence that no longer made sense. But what really destroyed her wasn't the courtroom. It was the neighborhood. The moment word spread that Karen had tried to sue the new road owner, me, the story metastasized. People forwarded the court's rejection letter to the community listserv. Someone posted a photo of Karen leaving the courthouse on the Maple Crest Facebook page. Another resident created a meme, a screenshot of the judge's ruling with the caption, "If it's not in your name, stay in your lane." What followed wasn't just gossip. It was collapse. Emails poured into the interim board. Karen told me, "We own the road when I bought my house." She said it was in the bylaws. She fined me $150 for parking on common property. Can I get that back? Wait, has she been forging financial documents too? That last one came from a former treasurer who'd served briefly before Karen forced her out under mysterious circumstances. With Karen no longer at the helm, the interim board invited her back to speak. And what she revealed left the room in stunned silence. Karen had been signing off on her own expenditures. No dual signature required. She created project codes for landscaping that never happened and used HOA funds to pay for her SUV's ceramic detailing under community vehicle cleaning. She authorized $800 in reimbursements to local consultants with no paperwork. One of those consultants turned out to be her sister. The final straw? A folder marked Board Business, discovered in a file cabinet during the audit, contained printed next-door posts and email screenshots from several residents, including ones Karen later fined or threatened with violations. It wasn't a paper trail, it was a revenge map. When that became public, the neighborhood turned. Even those who once defended Karen as strict but fair now stared at her with the same look they might give a raccoon tearing through their bird feeders. Feral, cornered, and destructive. At the emergency HOA meeting held in the community lodge that once bore Karen's photo on the wall, the board moved quickly. Motion to permanently remove Karen L. Wellington from any HOA position with cause. Seconded. Discussion. Tina stood. I just want to say, I believed her once. But trust doesn't mean letting someone turn our neighborhood into a personal kingdom. Jeff followed. We all did. But the facts don't lie. Then the vote. Unanimous. Karen was officially removed. Her name was stripped from the letterhead. Her community email account was deactivated. Her badge, the one she wore like armor, was returned with a snapped lanyard. A notice went out to every homeowner. Effective immediately, Ms. Wellington is no longer affiliated with the Maple Crest HOA. All past road-related fines are suspended pending review. Anyone with questions or past grievances is encouraged to contact the Reform Committee. People began stepping out of their homes. Literally, within a week, there were lawn chairs in driveways, fire pits, sidewalk chalk. The Rollins kids finally got to park their camper on their own curb without an angry citation. Mr. Alvarez, who once got fined for unsightly planters, set out an entire row of ceramic frogs just to celebrate. They named them after board members. One was Karen. It was the only frog turned upside down. Then came the celebration. It wasn't called that officially, of course. The flyer said Lakeview Community Potluck, but everyone knew. It was a neighborhood exhale, a shared sigh of freedom. People brought food, stories, and laughter. The Chowdhuries grilled chicken tikka. Naomi brought a batch of cookies with little HOA symbols drawn in icing, then shattered them with a fork for fun. Jeff roasted a pig. Someone brought karaoke. Tina gave a toast. Here's to no more secret fines, no more phony violations, and no more neighborhood surveillance, she said, holding up her glass. And here's to the one guy who didn't flinch when she called 911 over a tent. Everyone turned to me. I tried to duck the spotlight, but Olivia, the real hero in my mind, nudged me forward. I raised my beer. I just pitched a tent. She's the one who decided to pitch a fit. The rest was inevitable. They laughed, clinked glasses, and told me I should put up a toll booth on my road, just for her. But I didn't. Instead, I made it official. I recorded a public easement across Ridgecrest Lane for every property owner in Maple Crest. Everyone except Karen. I emailed a digital copy to the HOA, to the county records office, and to Jonah, who was already prepping for a potential class action refund case. The terms were clear: free, unrestricted access for all residents, forever. Karen could still drive the road, technically, but only under trespass allowance, not by right. Every day she drove past the sign, she saw her name as the only one excluded. And that was better than any toll booth. That was her legacy, printed in ink and steel. Weeks passed, then a month. Karen's Range Rover stopped appearing on Ridgecrest. Some said she was staying with her sister. Others claimed she'd listed her home, but the rumors hadn't been confirmed. What was confirmed? The HOA was changing. No more secret meetings. All board decisions required full documentation, double signature, and monthly open forums. Residents nominated Tina as permanent board president. She won unanimously. They even renamed the community Facebook group. It used to be called Maple Crest Proud. Now it was called Maple Crest People First. Karen's old newsletters? Deleted. Her portrait? Removed. The plaque outside the lodge that once read President Wellington, in service of order, replaced. The new one read, in memory of a lesson, no one is above the rules. The lake was calm again. One morning I walked down to my old tent site and found a note tucked under a flat rock. It was folded neatly. No envelope, just a few lines in tidy, formal handwriting. I underestimated you. I underestimated the law. I see that now. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some people think power is measured in who you can fine or what you can forbid. I measure it in how quietly you can win, and how permanently you can change the ground beneath their feet. In the weeks that followed Karen's final attempt at control, The neighborhood settled into something it hadn't experienced in years: quiet. Not the kind of quiet where people glance over their shoulders before setting out lawn chairs or wonder if a stray basketball will trigger a fine. This was true quiet. Restful. Liberating. Free. It started with the easement. I drafted it myself, with Jonah's help, a clean, permanent, legally binding document recorded with the county. It granted unrestricted passage across Ridgecrest Lane to every single homeowner in Maple Crest, excluding one. Karen L. Whittington. She was named specifically in Clause 7. Not to punish her, just to remind everyone, this easement was a privilege, one she'd spent years abusing. Jonah called it symbolic precision. I just called it closure. I printed copies, signed and notarized them, and hand-delivered one to each household, sealed with a green ribbon and a handwritten note. For your peace of mind and your right to peace. That same week, the new HOA board unveiled their first reform charter. This one wasn't printed on glossy cardstock or buried behind convoluted language. It was typed in plain English, emailed in full, and displayed at the community center for anyone to read. Highlights included: no fines issued without a board vote and documented evidence. No surveillance, anonymous reports, or unannounced property inspections. Mandatory financial transparency, monthly reports, annual audits, open records. A term limit for all board members, 2 years, no exceptions. And perhaps the most cathartic clause of all: any past board member removed for cause may not run again. Ever. Karen's name wasn't mentioned, but her shadow loomed in every paragraph. And that was enough. She didn't show up to challenge any of it. Not at the vote. Not at the forum. Not even online. Word quietly spread that she'd taken a job in another county. Her Range Rover disappeared from the driveway. Within days, her home was listed for sale. $70,000 under its assessed value. The listing described the house as part of a restructured HOA with fresh leadership and strong community values. Translation: we got rid of her. But no offers came. Turns out, buyers don't love homes with a legacy of tyranny baked into the bricks. While her property sat, the rest of the neighborhood bloomed. The Chowdhuries organized a summer lake party. Naomi's kids opened a driveway lemonade stand. With neon signs and hand-scribbled chalk art Karen would have found them for last spring. Tina and Jeff hosted a monthly Civics Insider night, where neighbors could suggest new ideas for the HOA while sipping hard cider and eating potluck chili. Even the folks who used to keep to themselves, like the Rollins or Mrs. Alvarez, started appearing more often, staying longer and laughing louder. People weren't just neighbors anymore. They were a community. And me? I stayed out of the spotlight. I didn't want a seat on the board or a statue or a plaque. I just wanted my lake. I pitched the tent one last time in late fall. Not because I needed to, but because I could. The air was cool, the fire soft, and Murph curled at my feet with a contented sigh. I watched the flames crackle and let the peace settle in. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't a court ruling or a loud victory speech. Sometimes it's a chair by the water, a night sky full of stars, and the knowledge that everything around you is truly yours. Not because you barked louder, but because you read the fine print. I didn't destroy Karen. She did that all by herself. All I did was draw a line where none existed and dared her to cross it. Turns out, if you understand deeds, land, and boundaries, you don't need to raise your voice. You just need to own the ground they stand on. And that's exactly what I did. Sometimes, the most powerful move isn't yelling back. It's signing the deed under their feet. Karen thought her HOA clipboard gave her dominion over everything she could see. She thought my tent was a declaration of war, my fire pit a criminal offense. She thought she could call 911 and have me erased from my own land with a single fine. But she forgot one thing: I own the map now. She thought she was in charge because she had a binder and a badge. But I had a survey, a lawyer, and a little something called the county recorder's office. She weaponized rules. I responded with records. And in the end, her kingdom fell not with a bang, but with a signpost and a click of digital ink. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare? A neighbor who overstepped? A petty fine that turned into a saga? Drop your story in the comments, because no one should have to fight alone when clipboard tyrants start swinging citations like swords. And if someone tries to control what you do on land you own, remind them who signs the property lines. Because power isn't about barking orders. It's about knowing exactly where the boundaries lie and having the deed to prove it.